So, it's been a while since the last review. Give me a break, I've got other stuff to do, okay? It's not like I can make one of these in less than a week or anything. Okay, I can, but shut up. Shh.
Artistunknown, doing those game reviews, so you don't have to.
You know, when I hear people talking about games making the transition from 2D to 3D, they're always talking about either Mario or Zelda or Metroid or Sonic, but no one ever talks about Pac-Man. Pac-Man made the transition in some weird ways. There were some pseudo 3D games that were more in the traditional style of Pac-Man, some party games like Pac-Man Fever, and then full-on 3D platformers like the Pac-Man World series, which is what we're looking at today, or at least the second one, because that's the one I played during my childhood. I don't really remember much about it other than it being good, and I like me a good platformer, so let's see if it holds up. The game starts in the middle of the night. Everything is peaceful in Pac Village, but then things go south when the ghosts show up on a super secret mission, and they're making a bunch of noise. And no one notices them. Good job. The ghosts are causing quite the ruckus. Sounds like they're even causing quite a bit of property damage. But one ghost has a different plan. Someone's a stalker. Boy, she really wants Pac-Man's power pellet, if you know what I mean. But oh no, the dog notices her and starts barking, causing her to freak out. Have I mentioned these ghosts are doing a fantastic job? Also, Pac-Man's married, so I don't know what this ghost was trying to accomplish here. Anyways, the ghosts eventually stop messing around and go up to this big old tree and steal all of its golden fruits.
My golden coconuts.
After removing the fruits, they just kinda celebrate and dance around and whatever, but then something happens that they weren't expecting. Really, what was their plan here? Were they just going to sell the fruits on the black market or something? I heard strange fruits go for high prices there. But no, as it turns out, those fruits were actually locking away a really powerful ghost who has the dumbest name ever. Spooky explains his plight and then the ghosts agree to help him and they all laugh and all live happily ever after or something. When morning comes, all the Pac people find out the terrible news, and this guy comes up to Pac-Man to explain the plot. And now we're free to explore Pac Village, and by extension, the rest of the world. Once we unlock the next levels, of course. Pac Village basically serves as a tutorial area that doesn't really explain much, which is fine. It's more immersive to let the player figure out how to control the character than it is to tell them. So how does Pac-Man control? Well, I mean, he controls. Okay, so there's something that's kind of a big deal that I haven't really mentioned yet. A lot about how this game controls makes me kinda nauseous. For whatever reason, the way Pac-Man moves around combined with the way the camera moves around just gives me really bad motion sickness, to the point where it's really hard to complete a level. I'm not joking, even just running around Pac Village here makes me feel sick. I've put this review off for so long because of it, and even now I'm feeling bleh. For the sake of professionalism though, I'll power through this. Mostly because I remember this game being great though. Hopefully after a while I can adjust to it and not get sick anymore. Now then, how did the controls actually hold up? Well, all the controls are standard to a lot of 3D platformers at the time. Walking around is fluid and jumping is alright, for the most part. One of the cool things is you can hold down the B button and Pac-Man will charge up speed and then shoot off, kinda like he's Sonic or something. There's even a ledge grab, which I kinda find essential in platformers now, though it doesn't seem to always work. You can also do jump kicks. Oh yeah, you can bounce too, which works well enough. I think this is only really useful as an attack though, because it doesn't really seem to give you any extra height. Speaking of which, there doesn't appear to be any sort of double jump or high jump, which is really annoying because a lot of the jumps are just out of reach with the single jump, and it's really annoying to get the jumps to work properly. The biggest issue I have is how Pac-Man bounces off of things. Pac-Man is round, so if you try to jump onto a slightly rounded surface, like all the roofs in Pac Village and even rocks, Pac-Man will usually just slide off the thing instead of landing. As a result, you have to be very precise with your jumps to make sure you actually stick the landing and can progress. And even then, it still seems really hard to get up there. And it's not like getting up on the roofs is optional, there's collectibles up here, so clearly the developers want you to get up here. Some roofs are easier to get on than others though, but most of them are a real pain. Take this blue roof for instance. Getting up on the first bit of it isn't too hard, but getting up on the very top, you know, the bit where the stuff actually is nearly impossible. Every other time I started playing this for the review, I kept trying to get up onto this roof, got sick, and stopped playing. Well, it turns out in order to get onto the very top of the roof, you have to grab onto this little metal bit here, and then push yourself up onto the roof. I accidentally discovered this almost immediately in this playthrough, but here's the thing. After I figured out how to get up there, once I got down, I couldn't get it to work again. So I really don't understand how anything is supposed to work here. Okay, so jumping and moving isn't the best, but the other important thing in a platformer is making sure the camera isn't horrible. So how's the camera? Well, it's not horrible, but it's not great either. The actual range of the camera isn't that great. Moving the C-stick will swing the camera around like normal, but then it just comes to an awkward stop in either direction you go, and it's really frustrating because it makes looking around hard. Moving the C-stick up and down changes the angle at which the camera is above Pac-Man, and for some stupid reason, the range on this is much better than going from side to side. To make matters worse, there's not even a way to look in first person. Using the L button will swing the camera behind Pac-Man, which doesn't work that well, especially when there's something behind Pac-Man that gets in the way of the camera, and holding down L also causes it to move all jerkily. Oh, fun fact, I actually had to look at a walkthrough for a later part of the game, and it turns out you can actually look around the level by holding L and moving the C-stick, but it suffers from the same limitations as moving the camera around normally, so it really isn't useful anyways. And finally, using the R button slightly zooms the camera in and out, which could be useful, but it doesn't really seem like it. Oh, and that's just the manual camera. I haven't even talked about how the camera works when it's in the hands of the game. Okay, so the camera isn't great, but maybe I'll get used to it, and maybe the level design will save this and make it fun. After all, this is just Pac Village, and it isn't really meant to be a fun level to run around in, even though there's clearly hints to level design here. Oh, speaking of which, throughout each level, there are several collectibles consisting of Pac Dots, fruit, tokens, and extra lives, and Pac Village is no exception. There's stuff everywhere, even on the roofs. Pac Dots restore health after collecting 50 of them, fruits are just for points, and tokens are currency, which can be used at the arcade to unlock old Pac-Man games to play, or they can be used to open up the museum, which the ghosts apparently trashed. Those uncultured f***s. After running around the village and throwing up several times, it's finally time to leave the area and collect the power pellet. But wait, what's this? Outside the town is a suicidal ghost. Well, I'm not going to give him what he wants. Suicide is never an option. That's not a joke, by the way. I mean, why else would a ghost be outside a village full of people who want to eat him? Plus, I would never joke about something as serious as suicide. God. After all that, though, we complete the level and get to see our stats. I'm pretty sure I got everything in Pac Village this time, since the only thing I was having trouble with before was getting onto the blue roof. I missed some stuff? Bonus token? God damn piece of shit, fucking weed, fucking garbage. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. So yeah, I guess I'm not getting 100%. Either way, we're now free to go on to the first level. Oh man, I'm so excited. So if Pac Village is a tutorial area where you get to learn on your own, the Bare Basics is the actual tutorial level, where you're actually told how video games work. Wow, I can jump with A? I never would have known! All joking aside though, I didn't actually know you could stop grabbing a ledge and kick off a wall by pressing B, so that was useful. This level is actually kinda pleasant. It's a much more open area than Pac Village, so it's much more fun to run around in. Granted, the camera is still wonky and there's a random bottomless pit, but it does kind of feel like Pac-Man controls better here. Slightly better. It's kind of fun is what I'm saying. They really shouldn't have made Pac Village a level with collectibles. It's such a small area and isn't fun to run around in, and left a bad impression on me. This level is a much better first impression though. So this level is called the Bare Basics because it teaches you the basics of the game, and also there's Pac Bears. It also introduces us to Pac Dot chains, a chain of Pac Dots that Pac-Man rides along upon touching it. These are useful for covering great distances you normally wouldn't be able to, but sometimes they're a little hard to jump on. But yeah, that bottomless pit was crap, because all the pits you see previously just have sand in them, and some of them even have collectibles. So you're kind of incentivized to look in the pits, and just when they get your trust, boom, you die. And have to start the level over again. Yeah, note to self, don't die. But actually, the only reason I was fooled into thinking the pit had a bottom was because the angle I had the camera at. I guess I could have moved the camera angle up so I could see, but knowing how bad the camera is, it'd probably get stuck on a tree or something. Oh, also, as it turns out, you can in fact move the camera all the way around Pac-Man, but it's really f***ing hard because it'll get caught up on the scenery. Only when going certain ways though. Yeah, this camera isn't good. This level is fun though, and you know what? So is the next level. And the next level! I'm even getting close to 100% on some of these, despite the fact that I can't seem to collect all the tokens, but apparently all the fruit is enough to get 100%. So as the game progresses, every level gets a little bigger and a little more difficult, at least until the halfway point at which it kind of flip-flops between size and difficulty. Each level also has a hidden maze, some more hard to find than others. During this playthrough, I found a grand total of 4. These mazes are a nice throwback to the original Pac-Man games, and are also a nice change of pace. After every 3 levels is a boss fight, each one getting more complicated and more different, though most of them are limited to the do this thing 3 times thing. Like the first boss for instance, it's pretty simple, but good. You just gotta bounce on the frog's tongue and it breaks, then you do it 2 more times. It does change things up though, and the tongue becomes metal so you can't break it, so then you have to rev roll into the frog's uvula. Oh no, now he's gonna throw up! Feel the pain. So yeah, we get dangerously close to experiencing 4, and then the frog blows up, giving us the golden cherry. After beating Blinky, we've completed the first area, and it's now time to move on to the second area, and all of these levels are tree themed, and all of these levels aren't fun. Well, the first tree level is tolerable and introduces us to the Bee-doing, which is a fun mechanic to play around with, but bouncing around like this when it's super easy to just fall into the void of nothingness below is kinda stressful. The second tree level is about the same, only worse because there's more platforming. The third tree level, called Butane Pain, whose name is very fitting, isn't good. I mean, the level is designed well, but with the camera and the way Pac-Man moves and how fidgety everything is, you have to be so precise in order to end up not falling into the void, because all around you is death, and the camera is always positioned so awkwardly, and there's all these fruits and stuff just cock-teasing you, laying off to the side of the platforms, begging you to grab them, and then you fall! In addition to that, there's several sections where you have to grab onto ledges, which wouldn't be a problem, but since one wrong move means you fall into the void, you're going to jump to grab onto a ledge and then fall into the void because the grabbing's imprecise, or you'll have to fall and grab onto the edge of the platform you're standing on so you can slide your way towards progress, but you'll end up falling because again, the grabbing is imprecise. I died so many times that I ended up getting a game over, and a lot of that time, I don't feel like it was my fault. I swear there was even a few times that Pac-Man just walked off the edge of the platform. There's also these tight ropes, which got me really excited at first because I love well-done tightrope physics in video games, but no, the physics here aren't anything special. They do have a smaller hitbox though, which makes them easier to fall off, and it doesn't help that in order to get off of them, you have to jump. Also, this level ends the exact same way as the previous level, so there's added laziness to the aggravation. Fantastic. After that train wreck is the second boss, which is actually pretty good, though the arena makes it a little annoying. Instead of a fight on the ground, this fight takes place atop a platform, once again surrounded by the void, and this time the boss flies around the platform and has blades spinning around its bottom. It's also spitting blades at you. You have two options to hurt it here, by rev rolling up the ramps and ramming into it, or somehow managing the butt bounce onto the glass. Like, seriously, how are you even supposed to butt bounce onto it? I mean, there are these Bee-doings here that launch you in a certain direction, so maybe while you're flying through the air, if you time it right, you can bounce onto the glass, but that seems really dangerous and takes a lot of setup, so why even bother? It's just much faster to roll into him. After hitting Inky twice, he moves on to his second phase, but I have no idea what he does here because I managed to quickly hit him twice before he could do anything. After that, he moves into his third and final phase, in which he starts shooting blades at you very fast, and he'll even move around the platform and try to knock you off. Once again though, we just gotta hit him twice and then he finally falls, giving us the golden strawberry. I think this was the quickest boss fight. I beat it in about 4 minutes, and that includes all the times I died. After that, it's onto the snow area, where we meet Ranger Pac-Man. I don't know if that's actually their name, but that's what we're gonna call them. The first snow level is okay. It felt a bit long, but there wasn't anything too frustrating. The jumping bits with the fish are annoying though. The second snow level, on the other hand, is fun, despite the fact that I died a lot. The sense of adventure and scale is really felt, and the bits where you run from a giant snowball are genuinely thrilling. The final running bit has a lot of cheap shots though and got tiring. Also, there's a lot of places where you can't move the camera and it makes it really hard to see what's in front of you. The third snow level is also fun and a great change of pace because we get ice skates and get to go down the mountain in style, though a few of the jumps are annoying because of hazard placement. There was also a lot of times where I died because I didn't get the max height in a jump or ended up hitting a floating box instead of successfully breaking them. Hitting the boxes is obviously my fault, but I don't think I should be punished for not getting the max height of a jump. Most of the jumps weren't like this, but a few were, so it was annoying. The pacing was also hurt because of the constant death. Also, even though I'm not trying to, this level seems really hard to 100% because of the speed. There should have also been another checkpoint between the cave and the next jump, because I died so many times and it was such a long break between. The third boss is okay. It doesn't really add much to the formula and plays out basically the same as the second boss, except more annoying. Pinky is constantly shooting snowballs at you, and unlike Inky's projectiles, these tend to launch you way the f off the platform. On top of that, the camera really gets in the way when trying to jump onto the Bee-doings and just moving around in general. The final phase is especially annoying. In fact, the only thing this fight really changes is that it takes longer to kill. Once again, this fight works well in theory, but the arena is so small that one wrong move when rolling up to hit the boss will cause you to fall to your death. The grand majority of my deaths in this fight were from me rolling up to the boss and then bouncing off it into the abyss, or getting launched off the platform by snowballs. Also, the music is pretty unfitting. I get what they were trying to go for, it's in the snow so it's gotta sound whimsical, but it's a boss fight and Pinky's angry, so there's a bit of a sinister sound to it. It's kinda cool the more I think about it, but I feel like the sinister undertone doesn't shine through all that much, so it just comes off as a whimsical snow level more than anything. Upon defeating Pinky, we receive the golden apple, and she receives a restraining order. And now it's on to Area 4, aka the worst area. The first volcano level starts out fun, but quickly gets worse due to a lot of the platforming being easy to mess up. The worst part is this ramp here. It doesn't actually function as a ramp unless you get up to the very edge of it and then rev roll. Also, there's a bit towards the end where you have to jump onto a block in the middle of lava. This normally wouldn't be a problem since the gap is so small, but the camera angle makes it so difficult to see if you're going to actually land on the platform, and suffice to say, I didn't. In the end, this level is still alright, but due to the frustration of having to do the level over again, the urge to collect everything wasn't there. The second volcano level, I hate. I love its design, but there's a lot of stupid design things that make it an unpleasant time. There's so many hazards spread throughout the level, mainly lava that instantly kills you. This ruins any semblance of fun this level had because it's so easy to fall in and there's no way to save yourself. If it just slowly drained your health and slowed your movement, that would be a lot more tolerable and fair. There's also bits of fire that jump out and burn you that sometimes seem placed in really bad spots. At a few points in the level, you get a pickup that turns you into metal so you don't take damage, and it also allows you to walk in lava. Not all lava though, just some lava. You don't walk normally though, you slowly sink, and once you start sinking, your movement is slowed. And in order to jump out of it, you have to jump several times. Sometimes it's easy to jump too many times, so you end up butt bouncing after getting out of the lava and end up getting right back sunk in the lava to once again repeat the cycle. The fact that it doesn't stop you from sinking is really annoying because there's times when you actually have to platform in the lava, having to jump over enemies and over gaps. Sometimes you'll even just die in the lava, even lava that you're supposed to be able to walk in. It's really inconsistent. The bits where you have to platform in the lava are especially annoying due to constantly being hit by falling hazards. They don't hurt you since you're impervious to damage with this power-up, but they do stop you in your tracks for a few seconds. Later in the level is a wall jumping segment which would be cool, but the camera angle mixed with how inconsistent the ledge grabbing is makes it way more frustrating than it needs to be. The bit where the lava slowly comes to a rise was funny though, even though I quickly died. Still, at least it was a fun, unexpected death. The third volcano level is alright. There's a bit where you have to jump from pillar to pillar and then bounce on this lava guy, and it's annoying because of the camera, but it's not frustrating. Something that's interesting is that whenever you have to press a switch to progress through the level, the switches would be green, and the blue switches would just do something extra. But here, the blue switches actually progress through the level. Yay, inconsistency! A lot of the frustration from this level comes from the instant death lava and how little margin of error there is when making jumps from platforms, because the tops of the platforms are so close to where the top of the lava is. There's a slight bit toward the end, which was a nice change of pace, but the camera is really bad in some parts. This level was kinda lame overall. The ending was really abrupt. It wasn't overly frustrating though, and it was also short, so the pain hurts a little less. After that, we come to the fourth boss fight. It's interesting because you can no longer use the rev roll to damage it, but that doesn't mean you don't use the rev roll here. Quite the opposite, in fact. Throughout the fight, Clyde will go over to a platform and idle, and in order to get over there, you have to use the rev roll off the ramps. Clyde's main attack is shooting fireballs, which act as pinky snowballs except they don't seem to launch you off the platform as much. They also leave little flames on the platform. Clyde's other main form of attack is flying over the platform, leaving flames in his path. These flames do damage you and they're really annoying, though it does become easy to jump over them with practice. The fight gets pretty annoying when Clyde starts shooting fireballs. Sure, he does shoot in a pattern, but it's easy to forget the pattern and mess up, and when you're trying to regain health, it's really easy to get hit by the stupid things and get flung off the platform. Pickups are also scarce. There's only one extra life at the beginning and maybe 1 or 2 health pickups, and these disappear after you die, so yeah, don't die. If you do manage to damage Clyde though, more pickups spawn at the start of each new phase. Don't bother going for the extra lives though, because it's really easy to get hit while going for them. Most of the time though, you'll end up trying to rev roll over to the platform with the pickup, but you'll not aim properly or overshoot or something and end up dying without picking it up, so they're really not worth trying to get. Another thing, the way the ramps work seems really inconsistent and ends up causing a lot of needless death and game overs. Whenever you're going to attack Clyde, you have to be very precise with where you hit the glass dome, because sometimes the hit won't register, despite the fact that you're clearly hitting the glass. After a while, I did get some sort of feel for the pattern of attack, I guess, because I was able to dodge the majority of the projectiles and flames, and once I got it mostly figured out, which did take forever, the boss fight was actually pretty enjoyable. Also, we got the golden pair. And now we get to the better half of the game, starting off with a water area. The first water level is interesting since the scuba diving is a nice change of pace. It's easy enough to avoid the enemies, but it's also easy to hit everything because there's so much going on. It's kind of a nice challenge though. It's not entirely frustrating dying here. I think it's because the swimming controls much nicer than the platforming, and you're not at the mercy of the camera. However, there are some parts where it feels like there's too much, and it's a lot harder to avoid death. This level was actually pleasant to play through. There were a few moments of minor frustration, but it was overall enjoyable. The second water level is about as pleasant as the first. In fact, it seems like there's even less stuff going on than the first. Or maybe it's just that I've gotten used to the swimming controls and how the timing of the torpedo thing works. I don't know. The exploding barrels are the worst part of these levels because it's so hard to tell how to avoid them. It's also possible to miss the checkpoints, so be careful. Something I've noticed is that I've actually been avoiding trying to pick up all the collectibles in these water levels. I'm not sure if that's a major reason as to why they're more enjoyable than the previous few levels, but it's probably a part of it at least. I'm sure if I was trying to pick all of this up, I would be dying a lot more. Still though, I don't really feel frustrated after the few times that I have died in these levels, so who knows. The third water level is great. It's really fun and different because we're in a sub now. I didn't bother trying to pick anything up, but just going through the level and getting in dogfights with the ghost subs is awesome. The game doesn't tell you how to fire your torpedoes though, so that's lame. It wasn't too hard to figure out though. And now we come to the 5th boss, which is fun, but you get hit a lot, even by pieces of the boss that you shoot off. And health pickups are few and far between, and the ones that do drop tend to drop behind you or in a place where it'd be really hard to actually pick them up. At times I felt like there needed to be more checkpoints. Presentation is also a little lacking here. All the water levels just kind of end. There's no fanfare or anything, they just end. Which is a shame, especially after this level because it's such an epic and long fight. And after it's all done and you're triumphant, you get nothing. Except for a banana that costs way more than $100. And now we come to the final area, Ghost Island. The first ghost level starts and we're now wearing roller skates without any explanation, and we're skating down a boardwalk. That doesn't sound like a good idea, but I don't care because it's fun. The amount of paths to take here is cool, though some of them are blatantly more dangerous than others. Also, this game is so early 2000s, it's got so many extreme sports in it, like roller skating, ice skating, scuba diving, dying. All it's missing is a pop-punk soundtrack, and then it'd be totally 2000s.
I just wanna stay in bed, but I know
I like that nearly every piece of the boardwalk breaks. It really keeps you on your toes. If you weren't wearing roller skates, of course. You know, I was thinking, boy, there sure is a lot of ghosts here, but no power pellets. That's odd, but it makes perfect sense. This is Ghost Island, of course there wouldn't be any power pellets. This level is really fun, though some of the jumps are tricky to pull off. Maybe I just suck though. The second ghost level starts and, we're back to regular platforming. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. Oh hey, power pellets. The spiders in this maze are annoying. At one point, you also have to pick up a cherry in order to progress. Wow, the first useful fruit! At a certain point, it is not at all obvious how to progress. There's all these useless beetwings, this brick wall, and the next part of the area is way over there! Apparently, you have to do a full-powered rev roll to get over there. See, I tried rev rolling before, but what's full power? Do I just hold it down for longer? There's no way this is gonna work. Well then. This level was alright. There wasn't anything particularly frustrating about it, but it wasn't really too fun either. That stupid bit with the full-powered rev roll was also stupid. The third ghost level is interesting. The tree on Ghost Island, who is apparently the brother of the tree in Pac Village, is mad because Pac-Man's here to take the fruit back. But he ain't having it, so he traps us in his maze. Despite being a maze, it's a pretty straightforward path. It's also kind of a breeze to navigate, though it's sometimes easy to slide off the path and die. There's also some stupid backtracking, but it's minor and harmless. There's one bit where you have to kill a ton of skeletons in a small amount of time, and it's pretty fun. Despite the fact the path is so thin, it was actually easy to stay on it while butt bouncing on the skeletons. Whenever you make some sort of progress in the level, a bunch of pack dots spawn, almost as if the tree is giving you a treat. There's even a spot right before the end of the level where you get a bunch of fruit and extra lives. He really cares. And upon completing the maze, the tree just dies for some reason. And then Spooky shows up out of nowhere and vows revenge on us, and it's off to Pac Village once again to face off against Spooky once and for all. Not before returning the golden fruit to the tree though, and then they all combine in their powers and imbue Pac-Man, turning him gold and making him powerful. Hey, wait a minute. This boss fight is really fun once you get the patterns down. It's actually a pretty epic final fight. Ironically, I think it's one of the easier boss fights, but it definitely felt like a final boss. There are some cheap insta-death attacks, but overall, the fight feels really fair, especially with how many health pickups they give you. Also, it's really weird that you fight Spooky by just kicking him. Like, what, could they not give Super Pac-Man some cool ghost-destroying ability? No, just kicking? Okay. The worst part about the fight is how it ends. It just ends. Like, you deal the last blow to Spooky and then it just awkwardly stops and cuts to a cutscene. That seems to happen a lot. It's like the end of level transitions just kinda stopped being a thing in the latter part of the game. I just want some fanfare, okay? Is that too much to ask? Well, we get to see all the Pac people come out of hiding at least. And after we beat Spooky, we can go back to Pac Village and get a thanks from What's-His-Face. And now we get to play through all the levels again and get everything we missed. Yeah, right. Going into this review, I hadn't played this game in well over a decade, but my expectations were high based on what I remembered. And those expectations were shattered, but there's still a little glimmer of joy there. Pac-Man World 2 is a really polarizing game. There's a lot of good, but also a lot of really, really frustrating things. The soundtrack is pretty good. There's a lot of memorable tunes, though some of the music isn't fitting to the level. The presentation is great. The pre-rendered cutscenes look great, and the actual graphics of the game are still pretty good. Though when comparing them to the cutscenes, there is a noticeable difference in quality, especially in the colors. This is most evident when you compare how Pinky looks between the cutscenes and the actual game. Ugh. In addition to that, each level also starts with a title card. They're basically just screenshots of the level with Pac-Man standing awkwardly in front of them, but it's a nice touch. The collectibles are basically meaningless, because aside from tokens, all they do is give you points to increase a useless score. I'm not compelled to pick everything up, especially when the game is at its most frustrating and I'm already feeling sick. Level design is a mixed bag. The levels are designed well and have a sense of scale and are filled with things to do and pick up, but because of the hazard placement in some levels and the mechanics in some levels more so working against the player, the longer the levels get, the more of a chore it becomes to complete some of them. The levels also feel a little too big, despite there being plenty of content in them. Maybe it's because at the end of it all, everything is meaningless, other than the boss fights, of course. A lot of the stuff in the game isn't explained. Like, why are we going to each of these worlds? Oh, we're going to Ghost Island now? How do I fire torpedoes? I can actually look around the level? Why am I wearing roller skates? What the do I do here? In the end, none of it really matters, but still, it's a little weird that they would just not explain these things. Especially when you're just dropped into a new level with some new thing and are expected to know what to do. Probably one of the worst things looking back is you always only ever have 3 health. There's no upgrades, and this really sucks, because there's a lot of times where you get hit so many times, so frequently, that you're barely alive for more than a few seconds. It's one of the many things they could have done to make this a much, much better game, but in the end, I still like it. There's a lot of really, really frustrating bits. The camera is really bad in spots. A lot of the platforming sections don't feel good because of how Pac-Man moves. Mechanics are inconsistent. There's a lot of cheap instant death hazards, and most of the boss fights are way too similar. But a lot of the later levels are really fun, and the game is just more fun overall when you don't focus on getting everything. But that also means there's no point in collecting the collectibles, so there's really no reason for them to be there. I think in the entire game, I only ever needed to collect maybe 1 fruit to progress. The levels are well designed, but a lot of them are really held back by the awkward camera and controls, but those that aren't really shine and the sense of adventure is there and it's real. Pac-Man World 2 isn't as great as I remember, but it is still good. And that is Pac-Man World 2. That was quite a journey, huh? It was actually really hard for me to get through the game in the beginning, but after all that, I do kinda want to replay it again. Without focusing on collecting anything, of course. Oh god! Ugh.